All right, we're going to kick this segment off with a Roastus Scrotus from our Patreon subscriber, Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, Katie.
So she says, I dated a guy for around a year and a half and into the pandemic, and he sucked. Well, I'm going to guess so because you're submitting this story. So just getting myself prepared for the suckage, I guess. I felt this the whole time, but went against my better instincts to follow a plan straight out of the Pick Me survival guide and ignore them. Never do that. Anyways, after about a year of low-value male nonsense, including, but not limited to, consistently directly defying my request for ways to act with my belongings, 2, forgetting plans or things I told him, and then telling me that me saying I told you this in a later conversation was condescending and made him feel bad, and 3, not wanting to hang out on our anniversary. I was finally getting fed up enough with feeling bad about myself and being leeched off of, and started coming to terms with ending things. Yeah, those are all legitimate red flags. I mean, I don't know what it is where men's like memories like a fishbowl when it's something that's important to you, but when it's something that's important to them, they can remember like when the new Nikes are going to be released, or like when like, you know, if it's a year and a half in the future, they can remember the date of like the new Xbox, but they can't remember your birthday that comes every single year. It feels, or your anniversary for that matter. It feels deliberate, right?
Oh my gosh, there's like this famous argument my parents had where my dad like forgot their anniversary 5 years in a row or something like that.
No.
And he in general, he always forgets he'll forget the birthday of his own mom and then get mad at my mom for not remembering it for him. So yeah, she's expected, like they're divorced now, but she was expected to
queen
to remember all, like, to be his social planner, right? And so there was one day, because like, and his excuse is like, I forgot, sorry, I just forgot, I'm just busy, I'm stressed out, I had things going on in my life, I forgot. And so one day she asked him like about some hockey statistics randomly, and he managed to remember like, the amount of like a really specific like hockey detail, like the number of like goals that a certain player scored in a certain year, like 10 years ago. And so, and then she was like, I fucking knew it! I know you don't have a memory problem! And so she would bring that up every single time you'd forget anything ever. It'd be like, oh yeah, you forgot my birthday, you forgot my anniversary, we can remember frickin' like this and this hockey player's statistics from 10 years ago. Like, yeah. Anyways.
He's ranked that as a higher importance than you, and that says a lot about his opinion of you.
Yeah.
Exactly. 100%. That speaks volumes about his priorities.
So to continue on, after a very pathetic breakup that he initiated after ignoring me for 2 days straight, and just 3 days before we were supposed to fly to meet my parents, I know, during which he told me he didn't actually love me. Oof. Wow. Okay, I decided I would never ever be waiting on another text of his again. I would never initiate contact with this obvious scrote no matter what. I didn't know if I could do it, but I did, with flying colors. After a couple of days mourning, I instantly saw this scrote for what he was: useless, pointless, a complete hindrance to my life. I had no urge to stalk him on socials, blocked him immediately, and 90% of the time had no urge to contact him ever again.
Yes, queen.
What's the other 10%? I feel like, where's the other is the other shoe gonna drop? What's the catch?
There's a little bit more here. So we didn't speak until a month and a half later, when we saw each other again for the first time, and she puts this in quotes, at work over a Zoom meeting, after which he reached out about exchanging our things. I gave him all his shit the moment we broke up, and I wasn't missing whatever he had, so I decided to just ignore him, realizing he did have something I needed. And I wasn't missing whatever he had, so I decided to just ignore him until realizing he actually did have something that I needed. When he was headed over, I told him to leave it on the porch and didn't contact him anymore. Fast forward another month and a half. So there's more. When I received a text from him that said, hey, if this is totally off base and uncalled for, I totally get it, but ... hip bone? ? Quotation.
What?
She says, he and I had a ton of inside jokes, and I remembered this was one of them, and I was shocked. He was reaching out to me. I won. He was trying to become friends again. Haha, fuck you. Yes. Then I remembered hip bone wasn't just any inside joke. That was our code word for hooking up. This scrote was texting. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
This scrote was texting me after 3 months of no contact, other than me telling him to leave my shit on my porch, asking me if I wanted to hook up with him at 8 p.m. on a Saturday. All men have is the audacity. The secondhand embarrassment was overwhelming. Yeah. See, it's never anything good.
I don't know how they're not just ashamed of themselves. Like, do they just not feel any shame whatsoever?
No. Well, the funny thing is when guys do that, it means that it means he's out fishing and he ain't getting any bites, let's just say. There's no other nibbles going on. So guys will go through their phone contacts and will just like message like 10 women that they used to fuck or whatever and hope that one of them messages them back. So yeah, don't even message these people back. Like, don't even give them the satisfaction.
It's a Hail Mary. You know, when they're not getting bites, like you said, sometimes they just throw one in the air and just see. They
just cast their net. They just go out and cast a wide net, see what they can get. But yeah, don't be that gullible fish coming up to the surface.
So anyway, I didn't respond for a while and cycled through some different ideas. Wrote up a couple of paragraphs about how much he sucked. Then I decided to keep it simple. If I wasted my breath telling him how much he fucked me over, he would just insist to himself that I misinterpreted the situation. So I decided on my response. So here she writes, insert princess gif of Queen Tiffany New York Pollard on her bed righteously scoffing, along with a message that says, LOL, fuck off, dude.
I absolutely love New York. She's just, she just queen shit vibes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what she sent him. So he replies within a minute and says, all right, I'm sorry. And then she says she deleted his text and went to bed. And then the next morning, she gets another text from him that says, I really am sorry. Honestly, the last few months have been pretty difficult with the breakup and quarantine, and I got a little too tipsy and thought that would go over differently. Not a very nice thing to do. It won't happen again. Hope you're doing okay. I just ... Shall we translate the scrutinies, ladies? So yeah. She's like, I really am sorry. Why? She says, honestly, the last few months have been pretty difficult with the breakup and quarantine. And she's going on like making fun of this guy. Like, oh, I'm sorry you've been having a tough time since you dumped me after being a piece of shit boyfriend for a year and a half because you're lonely during a pandemic. First of all, jot me down as who gives a shit. Second of all, you told me you didn't love me, dude. The fact that you are reaching out for my sympathy over your sadness, that you didn't love me enough to keep me, is not my fucking problem, and you to keep that smelly BO away from me.
Oh my gosh.
So it continues from here, and then she says the last part. I thought it would go, responding to him saying, and I thought that would go over differently. She says, this is my favorite part. The last time he really saw or spoke to me was during our breakup. He told me he didn't love me. I did not say the same. I cried. So as far as he knows, I am still sad and lonely and in love with him. So the different way that this was going to go over in his mind was that I would be so broken down and lonely due to the pandemic and missing his pathetic ass that I would actually act against my own best interest and allow myself to hook up with him, leading to an inevitable situationship wherein I have even less of a right to my feelings than I did when he was supposed to act like he loved me. No fucking thanks, dude. You're replaceable. So
okay, I like that her take at the end, that because it's true that he probably thought that she would be all sad, like he probably thought that she wouldn't move on and that she'd still be sad like the last time that he saw her, and so he was thinking, oh, this is going to be an easy lay, like she'll just like be crying, running back into my arms at the slightest bit of attention. So I'm glad she didn't give him that, at least.
Yeah, she says, so anyways, I sent him a link to a fleshlight, no commentary attached. I figured he'd get the message perfectly fine. I mean, if he was down that bad, 8 p.m. drunk booty call to your ex who's way out of your league bad, then there are options for scrotes like him. If he wants to fuck a hole so badly that he needed to hit up my phone, he can just buy one. Scrote, roasted. I'm like, you almost did the work for us.
Damn.
I know.
Yeah, she did the roasting for us. That's savage, actually. I love it.
This is Exo Scrotus Deletus. Oh, maybe this is what the name she wanted to use.
Exo Scrotus Deletus.
At the beginning, let's take out her real name and say, this is from our Patreon subscriber called Scrotus Deletus. And she says, P.S. At the time of our breakup, he was 28 years old and had not paid taxes in 2 years. And PPS, in the month since our breakup, I have gotten a new job at my dream company and a dream boss for a 30% pay raise, have taken 3 cross-country road trips by myself, and am now in the midst of an even more
Yes,
professional and
queen.
personal health success. I don't know much of what he's doing, but I do know he posted on Reddit about balding treatments making his scalp bleed. See, God doesn't like ugly. That's why God snatched all his hair follicles out from the back of his head.
Every time a scrot has the audacity, God puts his hairline 1 inch back.
I'm dead.
Oh my god.
All right, so we salute you, Queen, for this epic roast.
That's delicious, yeah.
And you're a level up. I hope he breaks his thumbs trying to text you next time.
And I hope that the balding treatment fails and he just remains bald.
Just use Rogaine. Apparently, like,
I hope Rogaine makes his testicles shrivel up.
oh yeah, isn't that a thing where, like, if you put Rogaine, some guys will put, like, Rogaine on their genitals and it burns? Like, that's a thing, apparently. Yeah, I read about that.
What?
I thought it was supposed to be like DHT blockers, but it also like blocks your testosterone production or something like that. So allegedly can make your testicles shrivel. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no need for Rogaine. I hope sometimes next time he's on a Zoom meeting, the camera gets tilted and people can see that he's not wearing any pants.
Bam.
Yes.
Like that Folgers commercial.
I hope the next time he tries to hook up with a woman, she says yes. He goes there, or she sends him to like somewhere that's 2 hours away from where she actually lives and blocks him.
I actually did that
I've
once,
done that before,
yeah.
actually.
I've done that before. Where, like, a guy who stood me up and then ghosted me texted me like months later, so I told him to meet me at a place that was like 2 hours away and then didn't show up, and then I blocked him.
And then just block him. Yeah. Text me when you're outside, block.
Because men are so fucking desperate and thirsty as fuck. Like, they will do anything for sex, right? So you can send him 6 hours away and he'd probably still do it.
He'd probably go there, true.
It's gonna be waste his time 21. It's gonna be waste his time
2021.
Waste his time 2021.
I hope he gets that fleshlight, trips over it, breaks his fucking hip bone.
Yes.
Thank you for this Roastus Scrotus submission, Scrotus Deletus. And if you'd like to submit, and for any of our listeners, if you would like to submit your own Roastus Scrote, please sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/the female dating strategy. And you can submit your very own Roastus Scrote, queen shit, or Gnosis for us to read aloud on air. Sound good?
Yeah.
What's up, queens? Welcome to the Female Dating Strategy, the meanest female-only place on the internet. I'm your host, Ro.
And this is Lilith.
And today we're going to talk to an early childhood educator, Zoe Eileen. She's going to talk to us a little bit about how gender roles affect male and female children.
Yes, that's correct. So I live in Wellington, New Zealand. I studied childcare development for 2 years, and then I started working in, I think you call them kindergartens. We have childcare facilities for the ages 0 to 5.
That's awesome. So we get this question a lot from parents. A lot of parents, I guess, stumble across our subreddit and are horrified to learn sort of the reality of what the dating world is, what it's like for young people out there. A lot of parents asking, like, how do I protect my daughter? How do I raise my son to be a high value man? How do I raise my son to be a good person, basically, given that we live in such a patriarchal culture, right? And so we wanted to, it's a big question, I know, and so I wanted to get your professional opinion on that, Zoe.
Yeah, it's a really great question because, in this world we just have so many external forces working against us, and it's the society we're living in is really raising our sons for us to have really quite negative male traits. And I think when you're raising your sons, it's such a hard question because there's so many small actions every single day that build up. And I've got a few of them, but firstly, I think the most important thing that we have to remember is that they are only little boys and they are only little girls. They're just little wee baby children. And I think especially for boys, the concept of education around bodies and body autonomy. And masculinity is really important. Little boys need to be able to be little boys and express their aggression and express their testosterone and their masculinity, or else that can be quite damaging and go inside, and they'll not know how to behave masculine, and they won't know how to express their aggression and their testosterone healthy, and that can lead to really unhealthy expressions of testosterone, as we see in all of our men in society. So I think one really important concept is this concept of never shame, only explain. And it's really important because when we shame young boys and children, they shut down and they go inside of themselves to a very dark place where they feel like, I'm not accepted, other people don't accept me, and so they'll line up with this internal narrative and continue to do actually more negative things. So it's really important to always come from a place of empathy and gentleness. And most of the time when little boys do something naughty or wrong, we don't use those words in the industry, whenever they do something labeled as naughty, the best thing we can do is just to slow down, come down to their level, and just simply explain why they can't do what they're doing and why it's wrong, and also the consequences.
And I think because you're dealing with small children, they seem to be, I would assume anyways, that they would be a lot more receptive to correction versus if you were teaching older children, where the shame might be, they won't feel shame, they'll just start to kind of act out, or they'll start to roast the teacher, or they'll start to do something to reject that correction. When you're working with small boys especially, are they a lot more receptive at that age?
Oh, yes, they are so receptive. It's amazing. At that age, it's really wonderful because just a few simple corrections can totally change their behavior. Granted, it doesn't happen all the time because each child's different and they have different parents. And sometimes their parents do some work that's really hard to undo. But I'm often shocked at how quickly they adapt and how responsive they are and just how eager to please they are. This is one thing that really amazes me, particularly about little boys, is that actually even more than girls, they have such a strong craving to please other people around them, and that it's amazing how strong that drive is. And so when you give them clear guidelines to make adults happy, and they're really obvious and they know what to do, they will try their best to adhere to those guidelines because children crave approval more than anything else. So I find that just explaining the rules and gently correcting it and reminding them. I think that's why it's really important to be gentle, because you remind them that you love them. You remind them that's not what we do here. We're really gentle with our hands, and they can feel the love, they can feel the understanding, and then they know when I want positive attention, I can just go and do this good thing, which it works really, really, really well.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, our audience, might hear the phrase don't shame, only explain, and they might not be on board with that because they're thinking about the way that they talk to adult men. And so I do just want to be clear to our audience, like the whole don't shame, only explain. Like, Zoe, do you think that
It's for 0 to 5.
that's for ages 0 to 5, right? It's not for man children.
Oh, absolutely not. Shame is such an important concept in society because it stops you from doing bad things that your peers frown upon. So shame is a really important concept in our society. But when you're so young, I mean, think about a time when you were 2, 3, 4, 5, and an adult made you to feel embarrassed and ashamed of yourself. That hurts and it impacts us for a very long time. And so I think we need to really approach from, instead of a place of anger when we're correcting behavior or any kind of negative emotion, it's really important to just ground ourselves, think about why we're reacting this way to the child, calm ourselves, think about an easy way to, well, a simplified way of explaining the situation, and then just explain. because when you correct a child 0 to 5 with shaming them, it's so much harder to correct them in the future because they don't feel like they can trust you anymore.
Can you give me some examples of times where, maybe a little boy has done something like, quote unquote naughty, and, what did he do and how did you respond to that?
Yeah, sure thing. I'll start off with the one that comes most intensely to my mind, and that is a little child. I won't name his name for just professionalism, and he was the child of a gangster. We have gangs in New Zealand, and his father was about 6'5", gigantic man dressed in gang memorabilia and had a swastika tattooed on the left side of his cheek. So you could tell that his parenting was not ideal, just by assumption. And this child was so violent, so aggressive, and constantly would be hitting boys, girls, everybody. And so it was particularly hard because he was already being shown at home the standard of behaving, and the behavior at the center didn't match. So it was hard for him to adapt, but often I would see him attacking boys who would attack girls. And so we had this rule where if a child hits another child, that's them learning consequences and learning that they can't go and do anything they like and there's going to be zero repercussions. And so this one time we had this little boy who just loved harassing girls. I don't know why. He would always go pull their hair, take their toys, steal their blocks, and just annoy them for no reason. And so the naughtiest kid in the class, I look over to him, he's fighting with another boy, and I tell him, "Hey, come over here. He's bothering Jessica and you need to stop him." So he comes over and he just pushes that boy. And I look around at my other coworkers and they are surprisingly totally fine with it. And I'm like, okay, that's not exactly what I wanted. But I sit down and I say to the boy who's bothering the girl, "Do you see that it's really not nice to have someone come and annoy you?" And he goes, "Yeah, I just wanted so-and-so's blocks." And I was like, you can't come and take this from her. You just can't come and take this from her because you know what it's like for other people to come and do things you don't like. Can you understand that? And they're like, "Yeah, I didn't like so-and-so coming over and pushing me." And I said, "Yeah, so why do you do it to her?" And he goes, "Oh, I just want someone to play with." And I was like, "Well, you can play rough games with this boy. Why don't you guys go play?" And they kind of looked at each other and then they just ran off and started roughhousing with the boys. And then whenever that boy would come and annoy a girl, I would just call over the roughest boy in the class, and he would come over and he'd kind of intimidate the other boy to leave the girl alone, and then they would run off and play. And so it was quite amazing because this one extremely troubled boy got a place where he could actually use his intimidation and his aggression in a somewhat beneficial way. He could protect a girl, he could express it healthily with another boy, and this other boy was explained using really easy to understand empathy because he just got bullied. Don't bully other people, and instead you can just turn around and go play nicely and go wrestle with the boys. And so there was really good for all three children involved.
So that's interesting because that it sort of reinforces the idea that the way that boys need to socialize with each other is not the same way that boys socialize with girls. And the reason I bring that up is because there's been a lot of like manosphere talk about how preschool children or preschool boys are being thwarted from their educational career because they're not allowed to roughhouse, or they're not allowed to play rough with other boys. They have to be quote unquote agreeable like girls. I don't necessarily buy into that, but do you think as a childhood educator there is some truth to the idea that the physical aspect of boys' play is important for their learning and socialization?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, They genuinely need multiple outlets to express this testosterone. Some boys more than others, some boys less than others, but all boys, and girls for that matter, need an outlet for their aggression. I have heard from the manosphere that, oh, men are being socialized to be like girls, but I don't believe that's true at all. I think that is just propaganda because, at least from my society and my work and here in New Zealand, I can tell that we're very pro boy behavior and very pro masculine expression. And so that idea, I think, is just simply propaganda because I think everybody in childcare knows that boys will be boys and that they have a need to stretch their muscles and go get out their testosterone and go do some physical exercise. Everyone in the industry knows how important it is.
That's been my experience as well, as someone who has a lot of friends who are teachers, is that they are aware that the that boys have to socialize themselves is quite different from girls. So yeah, I agree with you in that I don't agree with the manosphere talking point that somehow that boys are just being like, unfairly
Total horseshit.
Yeah, unfairly punished for being male.
They'll say like, oh, we live in a gynocracy where women are oppressing men by suppressing their like natural desire to like be a man and so on, right? And so my understanding of what you said is that, boys are different than girls and that's okay, but that they should express that violence, or that, not violence, but they should express that aggression with one another and not towards women. They should be taught that, essentially.
And that teachers are actually aware of that and actually guiding that with male children. It's not something that, there's no truth to the idea that boys aren't being allowed to play or express themselves physically, and that's why they're failing in school.
No truth to that whatsoever. No truth. I think when you get into older children, that there's more strict regiment to follow, just like going to different classes and so on and so forth, and that somehow they've conflated that into the idea that, I don't know, that somehow their masculinity is being repressed. And maybe it is, but that is an issue with the schooling system and capitalism, and not with our feminine society raising our boys to be less masculine, because that's just an outright lie.
I mean, some of the like quote unquote feminist parenting advice, not from any experts, but I see, comments on other parts of the internet. They'll talk about like, oh, I want to teach my sons that hitting isn't okay, or that like violence is never okay. And so I see some parenting advice on forums that is actually very much like aimed at trying to suppress all, aggression, right? And so I wanted to ask you, like, can you explain like why that's a bad idea, or what would be a better alternative?
Yes, absolutely, and I'm so glad you asked, because I think that so I think some people, it's kind of hard for me to word this. I think some feminists have this idea that masculinity is toxic and so we need to end masculinity, and I believe we just need to gently redirect it. There's one policy that I'm super firm on, and it is that the boys do not roughhouse with the girls at all, period, because what you're teaching them is that it's okay to lay a hand on a woman in anger. It's okay to hit her if she gets mad. It's okay to rough her around and be careless with her body, and that's not okay. And so every time, even if she's, wrestling with him and she's enjoying it, it's consensual, I redirect the boy, because it's not fair. It's a losing battle. She is smaller, he's stronger. Like, it's just not a fair fight. And so often, if I see a boy, roughhousing with a girl, I'll just go and I'll say, hey, why don't you go play with someone your own strength? Some people in society will find the idea that boys shouldn't roughhouse with girls offensive in some way, and they say, girls can fight too, and yada yada yada, but she shouldn't have to. And we shouldn't teach our young boys from early infancy and toddlerhood that it's okay to fight girls, it's okay to hit girls, it's not okay to be rough with women. This is the idea that we should be sending. And so whenever we say that, whenever we see two young people of mixed genders and their roughhousing and engaging in this aggressive play, what we're really teaching them is that it's okay to fight with the opposite sex. It's okay to be rough. It's okay to manhandle. And then, they grow up into adults and they think, well, I've been doing this my whole life. I've been wrestling with girls. I've been hitting girls. I've been doing this my entire life and no one's ever stopped me. So it must be okay. And so that's why I'm very firm on the idea that we need to redirect male aggression towards women to male aggression directed at other males, because they're not going to stop being aggressive. But we can teach them to be aggressive with other men.
No, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me, and if you've ever had a puppy.
Yeah, I was about to say that
yeah.
too.
If you've ever had a puppy, one thing they teach you is to help puppies learn something called bite resistance by letting them roughhouse and play with other dogs, a lot of times older dogs or bigger dogs. And what that does is puppies, when they're born, they don't know that they're not supposed to bite very hard. The way that they explore their world is they bite things, they put things in their mouth. And so if you don't teach them not to just chomp down on everything they see, they'll use the full force of their jaw to bite things. And so how they learn to control the force of their bite is by playing with other puppies or playing with other dogs in general. And they'll bite another dog and the other dog will tell them, they'll snap back right away and be like, hey, that's too hard. Or also, if they get bit, they'll learn through experience that biting things hurts and being bit hurts, and to not bite things is hard. So when you're describing the way that boys learn, it's not unlike how a lot of other species, especially species that are very, very active like puppies are, learn about their environment. They have to learn by literally testing the limits of their physical force against other dogs so that they know how to regulate it. And they'll learn how to interact with humans that way too. If there's an older dog, the older dog knows how to interact with humans, knows how to interact with even smaller puppies. So he'll teach the dog, hey, don't bite, don't use your full force in the back of a smaller dog. And also you can't bite humans the same way because humans have skin and not fur. So that's kind of interesting and kind of goes along with how a lot of other species socialize.
Yeah, the same thing with cats and dogs do the same thing. Like the mom cat or the mom dog will like correct the children when they're being too annoying or when they're, biting too hard and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it really boils down to the premise that you just shouldn't hit a girl, period. Even, I think, I see this all the time where boys and girls will be roughhousing, and a lot of my other fellow educators won't correct it. And I find that really uncomfortable because we're really just teaching the young boys that it's okay to hit girls if you're happy or if you're sad. That's your right to go hit them. And so every time I see any roughhousing, the girl shouldn't have to put up with it. It's a losing battle and she shouldn't have to deal with that. So, I just go in gently and I say, hey, did you know boys are much bigger and stronger than girls? And they say, yeah. And so I say, well, why don't you go play with someone your own strength? Or if they're being really aggressive, hey, I don't think Jessica really likes how rough you're being. Do you think you could go play rough with the boys? Because in childcare, it's protocol. You can't just tell them, no, stop that, because it doesn't give them any alternative. So we say, how about you go do this? Or do you want to go do this instead? And it's not about burying their masculinity. It's not about telling them masculinity is wrong. It's just showing them that boys and girls are very different and boys are bigger and stronger, and that's okay. And that, so if you want to play rough games, if you want to play wrestling games, go play with the other boys who really like those kinds of things.
Awesome, yeah. And when we were I think this is a good opportunity maybe to explain. You were telling me earlier about the cops and robbers and princesses.
Oh, yes.
And I thought that was such an adorable story. So I was wondering if you could maybe share that here on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had one centre of boys and girls, and there was a lot of aggressive play between the girls and boys. And so we made this game It was called Cops, Robbers, and Princesses. It's a really lovely game. Anybody can be a princess, anybody can be a cop or a robber, but the main premise is that we've got robbers and they'll just go along and steal things from other children, and then we have the cops come along and just try and get it back. And so this is really, really great practice, because if there's a child who wants to explore a more like adventurous, more maybe slightly negative connotations, like the bad guy, so to speak, they're wanting to explore that role and how it makes them feel, they'll play the part of the robber and they'll just go take something and run away, be giggling. And then the second role is that of the police officer, and they're learning about their role as a hero, someone who saves the day, and they're learning about how that role play makes them feel. And so that's really good, because it gives them an internal monologue of, I will go save the day. I have the power to take action. I have the power to go help people. I have the power to stop the bad guy. And then when it gets interesting is when we throw in the princesses, because they don't really have a role. They kind of just run around with the cops and robbers, and they have their beautiful little outfits, and they have their magic wands, and they'll cast magic spells and say things like this. And sometimes they'll boss around the cops and robbers, and they'll say to the robber, I want this dinosaur, go get it for me. And or they'll say to a police officer that I got my wand stolen. And immediately the boy, your wand got stolen? Where? And you can just see the determination on his face. He's so ready to go help. He just wants to save the day. He's so excited to be the hero. He's so excited to be useful. And so he takes this opportunity and there's that wand, go get it. And then he runs and he's running, he's chasing the cop, and the princess is coming behind, get that wand. And they're all running together playing. And then the police officer, he goes and he tackles the other boy and he takes the wand back and he proudly presents it back to the girl, and his chest out, he's just beaming with radiance because he's so proud that he's done such a good job of saving the day. And these girls are so happy because they get to run around and play, and they have a power position where they are the princess, they are the royalty, they're the political decision maker. They're beautiful, they're having a great time, they're not getting picked on, they're not getting harassed. If anyone tries to pick on them, bully them, harass them, they've got this swarm of good little boys playing police to come and save the day. And I love this because these boys, when they get to express the side of being the bad guy, and they get to express the side of being the hero, and the girls, they get to find out that boys are wanting to protect them. And so this game, I love this game because especially the look on the boys' face when they do a good job. They are like this little puppy fawning at you, looking up with you with these big, beautiful eyes, just so craving approval and praise. It's just so beautiful to see how they are they get so much joy out of being the hero, and they get so much joy out of protecting and serving, and it really validates them. So I love this game. It's so adorable to watch them all get along so easily. I really love it.
So how do you balance, because this is obviously controversial because you're talking about an explicitly gendered game in a time where most of the push in childhood education has been to eliminate gendered play,
or like eliminate the concept of gender roles.
Yeah, eliminate the concept of gender roles. And with that, how do you balance you don't want to have a situation where the girls feel too passive, right? Because it's really great to empower the boys to feel and be useful. But how do you also make sure that girls aren't feeling like they're powerless in that situation? Is it that I think you mentioned that they were wielding political power. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, they are. They're the princesses, and they know it, and they don't feel powerless at all because they have this group of stronger, bigger boys to do their bidding.
Boss around.
Yeah, they do. And everyone's happy. It's because I think we look at it as in girls, in order to receive respect, need to be like boys. They need to fight the boys. They can do it themselves. They can do everything themselves, and yada, yada, yada. And I think that's really sexist because we're expecting the girl to behave like a boy in order to prove her worth and earn her respect. And I think that's really unfair because girls and boys have different power from different places. And for this game, I really like it because the girls, they shouldn't have to go and they shouldn't have to go and fight boys to prove themselves. Instead, they can say, he got my wand, yada yada, and then they can basically order around these boys to do the boy jobs for them, do the boy work for them, and they understand that their voice has power and their words have power, and that they can influence the situation with their words and with their will and with their desire. They can put in input, they can tell the group what to do, and then they can have results that way, which I think is much more important because you're teaching the girls when you speak, people listen.
I love that. I absolutely love that so much. Yeah, because I'm very frustrated with so much of the parenting discourse. I hear a lot of, feminists, I guess usually liberal feminists saying like, "Oh, when I have a kid, I'm going to raise my children without gender." Like Grimes, for example, saying, "I'm going to raise my son without gender," which is first of all ridiculous because one, a lot of them haven't been to like therapy to unpack their own internalized biases, so a lot of them end up passing on, like you said, like it's kind of sexist to act like, in order for a girl to prove her worth, she has to act like a boy because you're saying that the standard for goodness is masculinity, which, it's okay to acknowledge that men and women are different and they're both just as valuable, right? And then women can be valuable just by being like the way that they naturally want to be, right?
And that's something that they're discovering even in, I was reading a study that they were trying to do gender neutral toys and gender neutral play in places like Sweden. And it's not really working out well because for whatever reason, there are certain things that boy children and girl children tend to gravitate towards. It's not always, it's not always exact. Obviously, we have people that are gender outliers, but like for the most part, when they would see certain types of play, like, I can't remember, I wish I had pulled up this article, but certain types of play and more action play was more typical of boys. And then with girls, it was more like relational play, right? Like you take your Barbies and they have conversations, they have like tea, versus like boys who are more action or you know what I'm saying?
Boys just want to go punch each other. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more action oriented play, and they just play. Boys and girls typically play differently, and so as much as they've tried to push gender neutral parenting, it hasn't been, and gender neutral toys and gender neutral play, it hasn't necessarily been successful because it seems that to me, or it seems to them, that at least some of the way that boys and girls play is innate. It's something that an innate sense of gender that we're born with that can't just be easily fixed by giving, a boy a Barbie doll and a girl a truck.
Yes, absolutely. And it's because women and girls, they are born with a larger left side of their brain. And so they have this advantage because they're naturally more capable of language, writing, recognizing emotion, um, reciprocating a emotional response. They're so much better at empathy, language, relations, just because they're born with a larger left side of their brain. Personally, I think this gender neutral or no gender way of raising children is actually quite unfair because you're basically assuming your child is a gender and you don't know what your gender is. And I think that we should really I think, when it comes to gender roles, I think that some gender roles are actually good. I think gender roles are so crucial in society because whether we like it or not, we are a gendered society. And there's always, always going to be gender roles put upon us because we're born male or female or intersex. And so there's always going to be a role that is placed on us by our society. And I think with the dissolving of gender roles, now we're seeing that men can say, well, because we're rejecting gender roles, men don't have to provide. Men don't have to protect. Men don't really have to do anything, and they're not contributing anything to society because of the lack of gender role. Some gender roles are actually good.
So I'm going to push back on that a little bit because there are, in fact, people that are born atypical of their gender. And I think a lot of the abolishing of the gender roles, but there was multiple reasons why people wanted to abolish gender roles. And ironically, it's kind of interesting because on the feminist side, between like liberal feminists and a lot of radical feminists, you're seeing a split, and they both believe in abolishing the gender binary, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
Where like the radical feminists say there's no such thing as gender. Gender is a completely made up social construct. It has nothing to do with who you are and has nothing to do with your biology. And then on the liberal feminist side, they're saying gender is an innate sense of being. It has nothing to do with your biology, so you can be whatever gender you want to be, right? So there's sort of a rift there. But I think the way I would think about it, at least in terms of FDS, how we've reconciled the idea of gender is more or less gender is a peace treaty between men and women to a certain extent, right? Like, and
Yeah.
I think what you were saying before, where a lot of the men's rights activists and their complaints and the general trend towards boys feeling useless and being useless is because we completely tore up the old gender treaty between men and women. And I would almost say this applies more so to heterosexual men and women, of which that is the majority of the population. But we didn't give, in the absence of the old gender treaty, a new way for boys to be. So then boys just became useless because they didn't know how to be. And in that uselessness, they became depressed. And in that uselessness, they got angry and they started being like, feminists are the problem with everything. Everything that's wrong in society is because of female, because they don't have anything to focus on and anything to aspire to, right?
That's so right. And I think as well that we're teaching our young girls that femininity is inherently bad. And I think this is something that liberal feminists are doing by accident, because they see, ironically, they subconsciously see male leaning activities and hobbies and careerism as like the absolute way to prove your worth, and they're accidentally disregarding the innate awesomeness of femininity. And as well for the boys, because we're lacking these gender roles, these men's rights activists are constantly screaming and kicking about they don't have a place, they're not allowed to be masculine, yada yada yada. And so I think we actually need to reinstall a new gender code. And I think for boys, that role includes their inherent masculinity, and it includes two things: being the protector, most importantly, defending women against other boys, and that's what I'm teaching them in the school, and providing. And I think that's really important, because we're going to be raising boys who are in line with their natural, healthy masculinity. They're going to know how to express their natural, healthy masculinity. They're not going to look down on femininity, and they're going to be proud to serve and protect. And they're going to make great husbands, great fathers, great peacemakers in society, because they're going along with the internal narrative that their job is to be the hero. It's to do great things. It's to do great things for your community and your society, and protect people and love people and nurture people. And that's the gender role for boys that I'm trying to instill.
I love that. I think so. On the one hand, I don't really blame feminists, liberal feminists or radical feminists, who are suspicious of gender roles, because historically speaking, it's true, I do want to acknowledge that gender roles historically have been used to suppress women,
enslave women,
enslave women. Gender roles, for example, like, oh, women are like mentally inferior, like only good for like washing your fucking skid marks out of your underwear, and that sort of thing. And historically, gender roles have been very much like men are superior, women are inferior, and relegating women to domestic labor and not being able to maximize their own potential, right? And so in this push to abolish gender roles, which are seen as oppressive, I don't know, there's been these sort of unintended like side effects, right?
Well, and also cruel to LGBTQ people, because there are people that are, they're gender non-conforming, right? They don't necessarily, for whatever reason, they didn't get the programming that the rest of us got that makes us, have, I guess, typical behaviors for our sex. So I think with the old gender role system, there were men that fell outside of that. They were demonized and bullied for expressing anything feminine, right?
Exactly, because femininity was seen as inferior. So if a man like wore a dress, he would be seen as
like a woman, and that is worthy of shame.
You're like a woman, women are bad, therefore you're bad, that kind of thing, right? And so, like you said, I think we need to and the other thing that's worth remembering is like gender roles have not been the exact same for all of human history, right? And even in different cultures have different gender roles, right? And so gender roles are fluid. Like we as a society, we can calibrate gender roles such that they are not like oppressive to, like, I don't think gender non-conforming people should be punished. Like they should be free to,
No, definitely not. I think all people should be free to choose their gender. And I think in the school, like little boys, sometimes they love wearing dresses, and we always support that because there's nothing wrong about wearing a dress. And I think if someone is gender non-conforming, that is really special, and that should be honored. And we have to we just have to tweak the roles a little bit. I don't think gender roles are something we need to be afraid of, because whether we agree with them or not, they will exist always. And so we are wasting all this time constantly trying to abolish them when we could make them into actually a beautiful, harmonious thing that help us learn our differences and use that to work together in harmony. So that's my take on gender role.
Definitely. Yeah. So basically, like, it's not that gender roles are bad, it's the patriarchal gender roles that are bad. And so we can.
Yes, that specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we can recalibrate gender roles such that they can be like feminist gender roles. It's possible for gender roles to be feminist, right? Like you said, where
Yeah, absolutely.
the girls are the princesses, they're like the royalty, they're in charge, they exert.
Their words are their powers. They have decisions. Their groups follow them. They can influence people. That is the main thing. They have the power to influence their society, and that's what we're teaching them.
And I think, yeah, that's amazing. I'm so happy. I'm like beaming right now. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's really beautiful because it's just the polar opposite to all this aggression we're getting within our society, and every part of our life is polarized. Where even something like parenting and gender roles, it's like such a hot topic because there's so much controversy and aggression. But I think when we approach it with this mind frame, we can be a lot softer and a lot gentler and really honor the child, and we can say, we're creating new gender roles for boys and girls that celebrates them, who lets them be elevated to the best behavior and lets them really be empowered to be themselves and be who they are and take action and know that they are able to influence their society in a really magnificent way.
Amazing. How do we actually implement this? Like, because we've talked about this, how this would work theoretically, but like, can you give us some maybe examples on how parents could maybe implement this in sort of day-to-day interactions?
Yeah, sure. So I really like we'll take the case we've been talking about where a boy's been bullying a girl, and we can just tell another boy to say, save her crown, save her wand, save her toy, go, 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 fight for her, protect her. And we don't have to be afraid or ashamed of saying these words. We can shout at the top of our lungs, fight for her, protect her. And then they go and they roughhouse together, and we say, good job, you're so amazing for doing that. I love that about you. And you're giving them all this praise about correct behavior, and then they feel really validated, they feel excited, they feel elated, they feel pleased, they're excited to do more protecting. Then you can do other things like enforce body autonomy, and if you see someone bothering someone else, you can say, I don't think this person likes that. Do you think you could stop and maybe go play with someone else? Or you could say to a young person who is getting a lot of harassment and they need to learn to say those words for themselves, you can just get down to their level and look at them, and you can just say, you can tell them to stop. And then they can be like, wow, I can't tell them to stop. And you may even be a little more firm. You can say, tell them to stop. And then they understand that that's a request that you're asking them to tell the other person to stop, and you're teaching them how to enforce their boundaries without doing it for them. You want to teach the children to do it for themselves. So you can say, tell this person, I don't like that, stop right now. Or, could you please stop that? I don't really like that. Or, you're being too rough, you're being too aggressive, you're hurting me, you're scaring me, you're being too aggressive. Can you please go play with another boy or girl or someone else?
So, what are your thoughts as they grow older? the motivations become less about trying to please people and more about like sexual success, as we've noticed. And that when they don't have sexual success, that gives rise to things like the red pill or the incel movement, where they feel like they were quote unquote white knighting. Is what white knighting is the term for what you basically described, which is like being a hero and
Or
girls
simping, yeah.
or simping, yeah, and girls didn't respond by throwing them pussy. So
Mhm.
how do you at that age then change the reward system in their mind? Because the reward system is no longer about pleasing people, it's about getting sex.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I think it's important to note that in childhood development, it shifts from being a parent or guardian based based approval, and then they move to seek the approval of their peers a lot more. So they go from, you know, the world is at your feet and you're basically like their deity, to they couldn't give a shit about you, and instead all of their focus is on getting their peers to give them approval. And I think this is really important to acknowledge how damaging the internet is and how damaging pornography is. For my children, there's going to be a zero internet in the private rooms policy. The internet use is only for public spaces in the lounge, where I can see at all times with my own eyes exactly what content they're looking at, because we all know how the internet radicalizes millions and millions of boys every day from the age of 11, sometimes even younger. So we have a zero internet policy unless it is for educational purposes, and if it's for social entertainment purposes, it's done within full view of an adult and only between certain hours of the day, so they're not getting oversaturated with technology.
Do you think it would only occur if they had the internet? And the only reason I'm pushing back on this is because, pre-internet, there was still, I don't know if they were as defined as a group called the incels. They might have just been called losers, like colloquially, or nerds or something like that. But they've always kind of been around, guys who weren't sexually successful, who then go on to try to reshape the world in a way that makes them more sexually successful. So you see a lot of these guys make like those Hollywood movies where the schlumpy nerdy guy gets the girl, like,
Oh yeah, too many
which
of those
honestly,
movies.
Like every Adam Sandler movie, every Seth Rogen movie.
yeah, and honestly, like that's a trope that legit pisses a lot of FDS people off, because these guys have no redeeming qualities, but for some reason the way they're often written is that they're the underdog and that they deserve a woman just because they learn basic life skills, or they're not as big as a jerk as the opponent, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think having the standard from such a young age, where we're teaching body autonomy, they're not going to feel entitled to a woman's body, because they've been taught from such a young age that they're not allowed to hit a girl or even touch a girl when she doesn't want, and teaching things like, oh, you didn't ask for that hug, do you just want to make sure they're okay, and things like, do you want a high five, a fist bump, or a hug, and teaching that you need permission to touch other people's bodies, and teaching them that girls are something to be protected. They're not a prize, they're not something to win or obtain, they're something to be.
You need to earn their approval.
Yes, you need
earn
to
their respect. Yeah,
you need to earn their respect, and you need to earn the right to touch them in a platonic or romantic way. So I think that's really important. And then secondly, I think the thing that parents have to be most afraid of is the internet. I think you can raise your children however you want, but the internet is what's going to ruin your young boys for certain. So just ensuring that all of their content, and I mean all of their content and media, you know exactly what is feeding their psyche when you're not around. When you're around, you want to know exactly what kind of internet media is making its way into your child's world and influencing them, because I think that the internet for young boys is the most pervasive and aggressive way of programming men to be incels and have this aggression towards women. So I think if we just take that out, it would get a lot better.
it explains their sexual failure in a way that the rest of society is not. The rest of society is doing the virtue signaling thing, which we at FDS hate because we feel like it accomplishes nothing. One, it makes women unhappy because we have all these like men who are not living up to our real expectations of them, because they
Yes.
think like, if I'm just a nice guy, I should be able to get a woman. And then it makes men upset because they feel like, well, I'm doing all the right things. Why aren't these girls like having sex with me? And then they get pissed off, and then they become incels, or they become red pillars because the red pillars gives them a script in the absence of anything else real.
Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of the reason why incels and red pillars are drawn to those communities anyways, it's because they feel that they're not,
They're not
maybe not
included.
included, or they feel
Their masculinity is bad. They need a place. They want a place.
yeah, they've been told that masculinity is bad, or they feel that they haven't received like the validation, or they've been shamed, or they've been as it's tough, because it's hard for me to feel like compassion for incels, honestly.
Right, yeah. Because there's only so much.
Because like by the time that they're adults, it's like, okay, you're an adult, like you have to
realize that A plus B doesn't always equal C. Like, you have to realize that the world is nuanced. Then they want everything to be a game.
Yeah, and I also want to draw the line, like there's a difference between interacting with like adult men and male children, because male children, they're young, they're innocent, they're pure, they haven't like transgressed. They're like, it's 4 or 5 years old boy, right? Like he's not born with sin, right? And by the time a guy is an adult, he's like, and even if the reason why he's done bad things is because of socialization and so on, like you're still responsible for the bad things that you do, right? So it's I for women listening to this who are thinking that this is like I don't know, like male pandering or something like that, where I do want to point out there's very different talking about male children versus adult men for this
when they're
reason.
adults, like that is not our job as women. Once they're our job, if they haven't figured it out, then they will learn through the harsh reality of repeated failure if we're doing our job right at FDS, where they'll just learn like, why do all these girls keep hanging up on me and disappearing? Well,
it's because you're being an asshole.
Time to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of like we've reached a point with like peak feminism where there's only so many think pieces, there's only so many like there's only so much that women can do to change low value men. Like low value men just don't care. Like for the people who matter, for the men where it matters the most, like the most misogynistic men, they don't care what women say or think, and so they're not going to listen to women, right?
That's so right.
The only way that they're going to change is by listening to other men, and that's why it's so important to raise boys from a very young age and lay that groundwork, like you said, about entitlement.
Permission.
A lot of boys are raised, permission, like they need to be raised from a very young age to not feel entitled to women and to see themselves as a hero and protecting women, seeing women as sacred and so on, so that they go out and they can socialize other boys to be that way as well.
Do you think, I would actually make the point that the best thing we can do as women is to pick high value men as partners in the first place.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Right? Yeah. So, and the reason I say that is because there's been a push on both sides of the political spectrum. The old traditional patriarchal model was pressuring women to always submit to men, a lot of times to our detriment. The leftist model, the more liberal model, has the quote unquote communicate aspect of it, where we're doing so much communicating, we're doing so much like emotional labor for men, and for men who a lot of times cannot or will not reciprocate. And because I think there's a misguided understanding of how men and women learn, how men learn versus how women learn, there's like this forever and ever push for women to keep communicating and not understanding that like failure and consequence is actually a really good teaching tool for boys as well as men, as well as grown men.
Yes, they need consequences, 100%. Yeah, I feel like the two most important things for women in general to do is just, one, we raise our high value men, and to two is just to stop wasting your precious, glorious energy on low value men who are not worth it. They don't appreciate it. They're not going to change. And so I think, one of the most powerful things we can do is just stop wasting our beautiful energy on these low value men.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
And that's our show. Please check out our Twitter at femdatstrat. as well as our Patreon, patreon.com/the female dating strategy, as well as our website at thefemaledatingstrategy.com. Thanks for listening, queens. And for all you gross who have a hairline that says 45 and your maturity says 0 to 5, die mad.